you're going to think that it's autumn. You're going to think that it's fall. And from there, you might start thinking that, okay, the weather is getting colder, or the school year is about to begin. Now, why do you think that just by seeing a leaf falling from a tree? Why? Because you and I are socially conditioned to think that. So if we have someone here, we have many people here who are raised in the subcontinent, many people who are raised in Africa and elsewhere. If you ask them, what do you see when you see a leaf falling from a tree? Some people will say, a leaf falling from a tree doesn't mean anything to me. But in our culture, what is taking place, we're socially conditioned to see a leaf falling from a tree as a sign of fall, as a sign of autumn. So now what am I suggesting to you? In spirituality, there's another point, and this is the question of meaning. What are the meanings that you give to everything that you see? What are the meanings that you give to everything that you experience? Because when we speak of signs of something, what are we saying? We're saying that everything is an ayah of something else. Everything is a sign of something else. Ask yourself, when you think of rain falling from the sky, do you think of it as something beneficial? Do you think of it as something beautiful? Do you think of it as something ugly? Do you think of it as something that makes your life difficult? And again, the question is why? Why are you giving this meaning to rain? Or if I ask you to picture a cloud in the sky, is that cloud white and puffy with a blue background? For some of you, that's what the answer is. Or is the cloud dark and gray? Again, the question is why? Now, why ask this question? Because what are we speaking about? We're speaking about understanding and seeing reality for what it is. But one thing that prevents me from seeing reality for what it is the filters that I have inside myself. So let's take it a step further. When you think of God, whether we speak of God in the Arabic, Allah, what is the first attribute that you think of? Now we know the answer we're supposed to give in Islam. The answer we're supposed to give is mercy. But now think about that. When you are going through struggle in your life, do you see struggle as mercy? Or, when you think of God, when you think of Allah, do you think of God as punisher? Many students come to me seeking pastoral help. And when we have that conversation, what do you think of God? The first answer is always God is merciful. But when the conversation gets further, what do you think of God? God is punishing me. That God is punisher. But you and I, in our tradition, don't have the right to look at God that way. We don't have the privilege to look at God that way. So ask yourself, if you see God as punisher, one question is why? The second question is, how does that affect everything else in the way you look at everything? Let's change the question. Do you look at God as beautiful? Or as the source of beauty? Or as the one who loves beauty? Right? Those of you who are familiar with what I'm saying know that I'm speaking of narrations of the prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That God is beautiful and He loves beauty. But when you think of beauty, does that involve your own self? Now, what is another source for the filters that we have? One source for the filters that we have is social conditioning. Again, school year happens year after year after year. The seasons in Chicago change year after year after year, and so this starts a cycle. As you and I know, another source for our filters is popular culture. Right? So maybe you know Lupe Fiasco, many of you know that Lupe Fiasco announced like 2 days ago that he's not going to rap anymore. He's quitting. And part of the argument he gave for why he's quitting, there might be more on work is best, is that when he's looking at these young rappers, all they talk about is the B word and the H word and killing and this and that, like it doesn't mean anything. And so he finds himself thinking that, all right, I'm trying to be socially conscious. I'm trying to inject beauty into hip-hop culture. but the forces against me are so severe that I don't think I can keep up with it. And ask yourself, if Lupe quits, how many of you look up to Lupe Fiasco? Raise your hand. Really, not too many. Oh, look at how high that hand went, Macho. So what else is happening then? That pop culture is telling you that this is how life is, and this is what you are. And you and I know, sisters know even better than brothers, what? That pop culture is telling you that if you're a female, you have to look like this, you have to be shaped like this, you have to talk like this, you have to be excellent in all these things, and if you're not, you're a failure. You're secondary. And that's also what is happening in terms of what pop culture is saying about males. Right? If you're not accomplishing this in your life, if you're not accomplishing this in your life, if you're not accomplishing this in your life, then you fail. You are secondary. So one source of filters that's affecting how we think would be social conditioning. The second one is pop culture. And so one goal then of spirituality is to fix our filters. Right? For example, ask yourself, how much value do you have? Because we are taught in our tradition, we know the ayahs, this is in Surah 5, the 5th chapter of the Quran, that Allah, God Most High, tells us that if you take one life, it's as though you've taken all of humanity. If you save one life, it's as though you save all of humanity. And we often speak of that to show how important life is. But think about what that is really saying. It is saying that one life, religion's not even mentioned, one life is so valuable that you can't even measure it. One life is so valuable that it is more valuable than all that the rest that the universe contains. So my question to you is, do you appreciate that divinely designated value you have? And this is not talking about whether or not you're a saint or a sinner, or whether you're a social servant or a tyrant, or whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or non-believer, so forth and so on. We're saying one soul is more valuable than a building. One soul is more valuable than the rest that the earth contains. One soul is more valuable than all that the universe contains. And what am I saying to each and every one of you directly? I'm saying to each and every one of you directly, each one of you is more valuable than all that the rest of the universe contains. What is this a response to? Well, we're fulfilling what the passage in the Quran says, but what is this a response to? A third problem in our greater culture. This is the problem of nihilism. Nihilism, N-I-H-I-L-I-S-M, nihilism. The basic idea that nothing matters. The basic idea that I can be a great servant to society, or I can be the worst tyrant, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Ask yourself if you feel that way, even in the slightest. Because you know many of us do feel that way. Who cares? But what am I saying in contrast? What am I saying in contrast? But by virtue of your existence, you already are more valuable than all that the universe contains. And then what am I inviting you to? That with this divinely ordained value that you have, to dedicate your outlook to seeing beauty. Ask yourself, when you think of beauty, what do you think of? Many of us will say we think of nature. We think of a beautiful tree with a beautiful lawn and a beautiful sky. That's a good answer. Some of us, if they're smart, will say, I think of my spouse. A lot of these MSA boys will say, I'm thinking of the spouse that I want to marry. She's on that side of the room. I won't say what the sisters are thinking. But the point being that, number one, that you have a value beyond measurement, and number two, that the goal that I'm suggesting for each and every one of us is to seek out beauty. Seek it out. How many of you are science majors? Raise your hand. In some categories, science or math. Okay, it looks like the numbers are decreasing, or some people are not being honest. science tell you about the value of the human being? What does science tell you about beauty? If you take it to its honest conclusion, what is science saying about the value of the human? That there's no value. How can you compare your value to a planet? How can you compare your value to a galaxy or to a universe? You are insignificant. Now, what are we saying in religion? We're saying the exact opposite. That all of those things are amazing creations of the divine. I used to sit in class, I was taking a class in cosmology 10 years ago on theories of the universe. And the teacher would put up these giant photos of galaxies on the screen, and I felt like I was going to pass out. Because I was trying to comprehend, number one, the size of the galaxy, and number two, why is it so beautiful? Right? All of you know, think of the spiraling galaxy. Why is the galaxy so beautiful and so gigantic? So one point I'm making is that when you have science as a dominant outlook, it's saying that you have no value, it doesn't matter. The second point I'm saying is that when you have science as your dominant outlook, it is taking the sense of beauty away and it's making it something technical. So let's take the conversation a step further. First, we were talking about what do we mean by spirituality. Second, I'm speaking about looking for your value, looking for beauty in contrast to what other things are telling you. Third, love. This is the interesting thing about Desi culture, South Asian culture. It looks like about a third of guys here are South Asian. It looks about half of the sisters here are South Asian. Every other song coming out of Bollywood, every other song in Urdu poetry has the word dil in it. Dil ko pagal hai, right? Okay, dil, what is dil? Heart, love. But the strange thing is that if you go into these same Desi households, nobody talks about love. Right? Everybody sings songs of love. Right? I'm almost tempted to start singing these, but no, that's not going to happen. But if I were to ask you how many of you in your household have ever had a conversation about love?